On Island today visiting with Sue Nebeker, and she's the woman that got inspired to start the American Hero Quilts, and Sue's going to tell us all about what the American Hero Quilts are.
We make quilts for wounded warriors coming back from either Iraq or Afghanistan, and the quilts are sort of a metaphor for a hug. We try to honor warriors and the sacrifices they've made and try to tell them how much we appreciate them.
And how long have you been doing this?
We started our 7th year, and in that time we have made 7,500 quilts, and we're still going strong.
How did you get started?
I read an article. It was kind of the perfect storm of emotions. I read an article about a young man who'd come back from Iraq. He'd done, I don't know if it was 2 tours of duty or 3 tours of duty, and he was 21 years old. He felt like his life was over. He felt like he'd seen too much, felt too much. He didn't feel like he fit in, and he killed himself. At that same time, we were discussing with our family the war and how we felt about our invasion of Iraq. And my daughter and I had been discussing that I had protested the Vietnam War, and I needed to explain to her that I was protesting the war, not the warrior. I felt like I needed to do something. I called Fort Lewis and volunteered to help, and I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. I thought I was going to go down there and read to soldiers that had been wounded. I don't know what I thought I was volunteering for, but they didn't want me. And so, as a quilter, I thought that we could make quilts for wounded warriors. So my husband and I went around, honestly, it was every fabric store we could think of, and bought up all kinds of fabric to make the quilts. Anything that was on sale we bought, and we put up posters all around Vashon saying that we needed people's help, that we wanted people to come and sew quilts for wounded warriors. We wanted them to leave their politics at the door, and we wanted to be able to thank our warriors. So it was quite an amazing experience because, first of all, my husband was worried that no one would show up. And then the situation became that we had to phone for emergency help for people to bring ironing boards and irons and more sewing machines because more and more people came. And I think one of the most amazing things is that everyone wanted to do something about the Iraq War. People were upset about it, but they didn't know what to do. And this seemed like a concrete thing that people could do. And my husband said, "You need to come out in the parking lot." Well, I went out in the parking lot, and there was a car that had a bumper sticker for George Bush. There was a car that had a bumper sticker for Ralph Nader. There were every political thing that you could think of was across those bumper stickers. Yet if you went inside, it was a very cohesive group of people coming together for a common goal. So at the end of that, we had 100 quilts. It was extraordinary. And we took them down to Madigan, and they received them and were thrilled to have them. And then they said, "This is wonderful, when are you coming back?" Well, I hadn't thought that far, and I don't know what I was thinking. Did I think that 100 quilts was going to cover it? It was a very bad moment for me because I hadn't planned ahead. So I came home and I got on the internet and I posted what had happened and I asked for help. And then I went to the Quilt Guild here on Vashon Island and I asked for help. And that's really the start of American Hero Quilts and where it's gone from there.
Are the Vashon sewers doing the 7,000 quilts, or are you having people from all over help you?
We've had quilts from all over the United States and as far away as Scotland and England. And we have quilters all over the United States. That how a quilt works is oftentimes someone will make a quilt top for us, and then someone else will quilt it. So someone will send us the quilt top, and then we send it out to be quilted. We don't use tied quilts because what's hanging out can get into open wounds, and we like them machine quilted, and the reason why is they hold up very, very well. Washington State has one of the largest warrior transition battalions in the United States. It was a 100-bed facility, which now is going to go up to a 1,000-bed facility. So you can imagine as people cycle through that they need more quilts. A year ago, we were contacted by the hospital at Craig Air Force Base in Afghanistan, and they asked if we could send quilts directly to them. And so that's another aspect of having to kind of ramp up and provide more quilts than we were used to quilting. We agreed that we could provide 100 quilts a month to them, which is, my hope is if you build it, they will come sort of arrangement so that if you need it, there they are. And our past experience has been that people have been wonderfully generous. When they contacted us, they were shipping 50 people a month out of Craig Air Force Base. Then it was 100, and it's now 350. So at some point, we have to figure out how to ramp that up, because one of my worst nightmares is that they would cover one person that was wounded in a green scratchy army blanket and another person that was wounded in an American Hero quilt, and that feels unacceptable to me. There was a gentleman that called me from West Virginia, and he had had the most traumatic experience. A woman had called him right after his son had passed and told him that she wanted to make a quilt for him that would celebrate the young man's life and also be a memento for the family about his loss. In his grief, he packaged up all the pictures they had of this young man, and they sent it off to this woman. The family decided they wanted to see where their son was buried, and so they went to Arlington Cemetery to see where he was buried. And it was several months after his death, and there happened to be an anti-war demonstration that was going on. What they saw, to their incredible horror, were pictures of their son's face and pictures of their son on the backs of t-shirts saying, "You don't want this to happen to your child." It was a horribly painful, traumatic experience for them. So he asked if we would make a quilt for he and his wife, and they had one picture left. So they sent that photo. We now have made the quilt top. It will be put on the machine today for us to quilt, and we'll make sure that this family that's having a very difficult time will have this quilt by Thanksgiving.
So you have 100 quilts that you need for Afghanistan. How many quilts a month do you need to take to Madigan?
Generally speaking, we take 100 every month.
People need to provide you with quilt tops for 200 quilts a month?
Correct.
At least. It's even
Well,
better.
at least. It would be better if it were more, but at least 200 quilt tops a month is what we need.
Would you prefer that they're all quilted and then they're all ready to go?
That, of course, would thrill us. It doesn't often happen that way, and because the warriors get to choose their own quilt, they were all picking red, white, and blue, so now we're asking that the quilt tops be in red, white, and blue. We like them to be about twin size, and they can't have any sparkly fabric because the sparkles that are on the fabric can flake off and get into open wounds. And they need to be 100% cotton, so you know, we do have requirements for what we need. But the idea of a finished quilt coming here that fits those requirements and that size is absolutely thrilling.
Okay, well, thank you, Sue. It's been very informative.